How are we doing today, guys? So today we're going to be talking about the pull-up, specifically kipping pull-ups, building into butterfly, as well as ring pull-ups as well, and obviously that translates straight into chest bars. So firstly we'll talk about positions, then we'll be talking about actually how to build into getting into a pull-up, and then from there we'll talk into the variations for the butterfly, chest bar, and rings. So first things first, we want to be talking about when we're talking pull-ups is we want to be talking about the grip. So two grips that quite often people will use. First one is thumb over the top, and then the other one is thumb wrapped around. Now both are usable, both work. However, generally in terms of building up someone's capacity and learning, we want the thumb around. Thumb around is generally a safer grip, because it means you're locked into the bar significantly better. And this allows you to generate more force onto it, which will help you later on for learning things like muscle ups, rings, all that sort of stuff. Whereas thumb over the top might feel more comfortable and might reduce some of the pain on hands, but generally it won't allow you to build yourself up to be able to have as much grip and help you early on. Having said that, the more advanced people get, they can switch rounds to the thumb over the top, if they feel like that's going to benefit them for particularly the simpler movements like the pull-up, the toe to bar, etc. But to begin with, thumb around is significantly safer, and it will actually help with the better pull. It also allows you to generate more force through your bicep, through how the hand works with muscle engagements. So think about that for your first one and get used to holding onto that grip. It will create a little bit of pinching, but that's grip. That's regardless whether you're doing thumb over or thumb under. However, you've got to build the hand up and build those calluses. From there, the main concept that we want to start thinking about is understanding that with kipping, and this is with all of the pull-ups, kipping, chest to bar, butterfly chest to bar, and rings, all of them, we need to understand about keeping your weight balanced around the bar. Now, the center of mass for a person, the average person, is around about belly button height, fraction lower generally, in the center of your body. This is the point that they use to figure out where your weight is distributed. Now, what this means is that if I move that center of mass point outside my base of support, in this case my foot, I'm much more likely to fall as I move over that point. And if you watch from side on, you'd probably see that as my hips pass beyond my toes, that's the point at which I lose control and have to step forwards. So when we're hanging on a bar, this works the exact same way. We want our center of mass to be balanced around the center point of the bar or the anchor point of the rings. This allows you to basically maintain control and stop yourself swinging. So a lot of people, when they start to kip and learn the action, they swing. So when we're doing kipping, we are not swinging. One of the poorest cues that you can get is to swing. We don't want that. We want to kip. A kip is a controlled action, whereas a swing is uncontrolled. So if I was to demonstrate that, as I jump into a kip, I'm going to deliberately create a swing. That's a swing. I'm not doing anything to do that. That's just gravity doing that. Now, I can create that swing and have that swing happening while I'm performing a kip. And quite often what this feels like is that someone will have an easy rep and then a hard rep, where they'll generate tons of height, and the next one where they're barely able to get their chin over the top. And it continues in that fashion. That means you're swinging. So a kip and a swing can happen at the same time. But kipping is what we're looking for because it allows you to maintain balance, because it gets rid of that hard rep, easy rep thing. So when we're talking about balance around the bar, we're talking about rib cage being on one side, or rib cage head, and we're talking about legs being on the other side. So it's all about thinking about your hips. So if you watch people who are really good at their gymnastics, you watch it, the hip will almost always be in line with the center of the bar. And that's why they look so efficient. It's because that hip never moves. The rib cage moves, the legs move, and they're on one side and the other, and then they'll switch, and they'll switch, and they'll switch, doing whatever movement they're doing. So we want to understand about balance around the bar. think about that point, and in particular, think about what the ribs are doing. If you can control what your shoulders are doing, and shoulders leading it, your ribs are leading it, then it makes it very easy to control the legs. Whereas quite often what people will do is they'll hang and they'll swing their legs around versus actually moving the rib cage. So think about controlling the rib cage, and you'll be surprised at how quickly the rest of it will start to fall into place. So talking about the actual kip itself, a hollow is where we are sitting in, hips being tucked under, toes are pointed, quads are locked, rib cage is pulled down, and you're pulling down on top of that bar. An arch is the opposite, where you are pulling back through the shoulders, you are creating an arch through your spine, particularly thoracic. The lumbar will be involved, but you don't want the lumbar being the only thing. From there, the hip will extend and pull back, and again, legs are long, quads are locked, etc. And as you can see, on one, the hollow, the legs are forwards, the ribs are back. On the other, the ribs are forwards, the legs are back. And this allows us to create that balance around the bar. Now, this is what we're going to build into for our first drill. First drill is to do the kip swing. Now, kip swing is all about just practicing the technique, and like I said, building that understanding of where your body is around the bar. So really easy way to start, I recommend starting, is jumping up and having a dead hang to begin with. Now, when you jump up to try and get a dead hang deliberately, obviously we can change this, and jumping into it can help for starting for some people, but however, it doesn't really teach you about the rhythm. So when you jump up though, jump up so you're directly underneath the bar. I'm standing literally right in line with this, and allows me to jump straight up. From there, I'm going to deliberately just transition between hollow to arch, hollow to arch, hollow to arch. Hang, dead. From there, long arms, and I'm going to use my shoulders to control that movement. That's your basic kip swing. Now, I can obviously add more height to that and generate more force and things like that, but the basics around the first point is just getting that understanding of how to move ribs and legs in opposite direction. We're keeping the hips in the middle. That's your kip swing. From now, we start talking about how to actually generate up into the pull-up. So we start to think about pulling around the bar. Now, what this will create ultimately is creating a half moon shape. And this is on the way up and on the way down. So if I mimic that shape, what I'm talking about there is that if I'm below, I'm going to be creating my arch and hollow, arch and hollow. What I'm going to try and do from there is create my arch. As I pull back, I'm going to try and pull down on that bar, and at the point at which I start to go weightless, I'm going to pull in towards that bar to get my chin over the top of the bar. From there, I'm going to be looking to hold that hollow position. I'm going to push away, get back to my hollow shape, and then arch again and return. So all these positions are about creating a nice consistent position, a nice consistent shape. And what you would have noticed throughout that whole moon shape is that my hip stays central. As I come down, hip stays underneath the bar, push back, hip stays underneath. So again, it allows you to get into that position. Now, big thing with creating that is start in a long arm position in that hollowed shape and get back to a long arm position. Where people go wrong is they hold too much tension in their elbows, and this doesn't allow you to actually get through. Also means a lot of big chance of impingement through the front of the shoulder, through the bicep tendon, etc., pecs. So we want to be thinking about making sure you get long in both shapes, and that's going to create that half moon shape. Now, too often people worry too much about trying to get their chin over the bar. Don't stress too much about getting the chin over the bar. Gradually build your height up so that you can go all the way through. So I'm quickly just going to demonstrate that action. Just chalking my hands. Chalk is useful. It does help with grip. Also stops you sliding, particularly in warm weather when your hands are sweaty. So it will allow you to just keep a little bit better grip on it, which can help with tearing, things like that. However, moisture is also important, so make sure you're moisturizing hands. That'll help protect the hand long term. So as I go into that, I'm going to create that arch hollow, and then from there I'm just going to gradually increase my pull height until I actually get the chin over the top of the bar. So 3 reps there, and each one I just gradually got a little bit higher, and all I was working on is creating that half moon shape each time. Again, keeping nice and long as I'm doing that. So next step after your kip swing is learning how to create that half moon shape and get through the entirety of the movement. Again, notice the first one I didn't even get my head above the bar. Second one I pulled to my eye line, nose sort of height. Third one I pulled over the top. So gradually build your height up as you feel comfortable. Now, each time you change your height, your cycle rate's going to change. By that I mean how many reps you do in, say, a second, 2 seconds, 5 seconds. If you're doing the first one, you might get 3 reps in 5 seconds. If you're doing, as you go higher and higher, you might only get 2. Reason for this is because it takes longer to travel, has a longer travel time. You can shorten that travel time by, or time it takes to do a rep by tightening your kip up, etc. But we're not really talking about that right at the moment. And that's a more advanced concept. So, as you go higher, that position starts to get shorter and shorter and shorter. Now, it gets longer travel time as you go through. Now, this means that you need to change your timing. If you're doing a very low pull, it's going to be quite a fast cycle rate. If you're doing quite a high pull, particularly if you're going up towards chest to bars, everything slows down even further. So if I do a couple of low pulls, again, that's where those reps are relatively slow, or relatively quick, I should say. If I go to a higher pull, you'll notice that takes me a little bit longer. So the higher pull takes a longer time to achieve, which means you need to change that timing. Now, learning about this timing allows you to control your position. Better you control your position, more efficient you are, the better understanding you're going to have and being able to get actually to more advanced gymnastics. So don't stress about getting a chin over the bar. Worry about just gradually building yourself up. Okay, in terms of cues to actually achieve it. So, as I'm going through that action, obviously the hollow to arch, main thing you need to think about, grip, staying tight and long. Gymnastics rewards leverage. The longer you are, the more force you have, particularly with those feet that move, because that's going to allow you to create longer lever, more force. So as those toes come up, you'll be able to create that little bit of a hip pop to then push yourself over the top, which is what you'll be seeing as I go through. So if I talk through that, and as I do this hip pop and pull down, I'm going to go from my arch, I'm going to pull down on top of that bar, the toes are going to lift, little hip pop, and then I'm going to go up to that hip pop is going to give me the cue for weightlessness, to pull to the bar, and then from there, I'm going to push back, get my arms long again, repeat the process. So as I go through, arch, toes, hips, and up. Toes, hips, and up. So I exaggerated that a little bit as I went through that one, but I'm pulling down on that bar as well. So those are the cues that you want to be thinking about and the concepts you want to be thinking about to allow you to get into your pull-up. Now, when we go to a chest to bar, going to that next level, like I said, the timing slows down. This means that you just need to take a little bit longer to allow yourself to actually generate that height. Now, what this typically means is the shoulders stay this side or behind the bar for a lot longer. Don't try and pull early. Biggest mistake I see when people try to go to chest to bars from their pull-ups is they come through and they try and arch to get their chest to the bar. Now, when they arch to create the chest to the bar, they actually pull their feet back. Bent knees, underneath, etc. Now, it allows them to get the chest to the bar, and people can successfully get chest to bars by doing that. However, it doesn't teach you to pull around the bar. Now, most people who get chest to bars then want to make the jump to muscle ups. If you're not pulling around the bar, you're going to find it very, very hard to get to a muscle up because you're trying to pull straight through the bar the entire time. So in terms of doing yourself a favor to get to muscle ups as soon as possible, don't learn that shape. Just avoid it, because that way you can learn to pull around the bar. This typically requires a little bit more strength, requires a little bit better technique, requires tighter shape, stronger hollow, etc. But long term, it will get you to a muscle up faster and quicker than what pulling underneath will. Whereas that'll just get you a fast chest to bar, and then your skill development will kind of stop dead there. there's no point stopping your skill development for a middle of the range skill. Build it up to the top end skill and you'll find it significantly easier to keep progressing. So everything that we just said about the pull-up, it all stays the same. All that you need to do, everything pulls back a little bit longer. So what you will notice, or if I talk you through it, you're going to go through your arch, you're going to hollow back, you're going to snap back like a rubber band, you're going to pull back down on the bar, the toes are going to come up a little bit higher, the hips are going to pop a little bit higher, the shoulders are going to stay behind the bar, long arm for longer, and then from there I'm going to pull my chest to the bar. Now for a CrossFit, the chest to bar counts as anything below the collarbone down. Any contact through there counts as a chest to bar. Going to make contact. You'll notice that rather than my elbow staying down like they do in a pull-up, you'll see a slight pullback as I start to transition round. That slight pullback is what actually gets the chest to the bar, and you do actually need to think about that. So when I come through, if I pull with just my arms, I can't actually get the chest to make contact with the bar itself if I just pull in with my arms by themselves. I need to retract. I need to pull back with those elbows to allow for the chest to actually make contact. So that little pull back at the top allows you to create that shape. That's going to make the impact. From there, I'm going to do, the feet are also going to come down underneath. So because I'm starting to move around the bar, remember what I said about the hips needing to stay underneath? Because I'm coming higher and I'm actually touching out on the outside of the bar, remember, don't want to touch underneath, that's going to mean that the feet have to come back to make that contact. So rather than staying out in front a little bit, which is what a lot of pull-ups can do. This coming back, again, takes more time. Once you have contact on the bar, push away, push the feet away in front of you to get back to your hollow, keep the hips under the bar, transition back through, and back over again. And you'll find, again, everything other than that stays exactly the same. Only real differences, little elbow pull back at the top, retraction. The feet will come back a little bit at the top, and the contact and the travel time, or feet come higher, travel time is longer. So I'll demonstrate a couple of reps on those. So that's your chest to bar. Again, notice how I stayed long with those. Toes came up higher, but the hips still popped to allow me to touch on the outside of that bar, not on the underside. And I was able to hold those hollow shapes, hollow and arch shapes all the way through. Trust me, if you learn those and learn to chest to bar that way, your progression to a muscle up is significantly easier. Because all you need to do is just pull a little bit harder and go a little bit higher. Everything just keeps on adding more so until you get over the top. Okay, moving into the rings. I'm going to tie the rings in here. So reason why rings can be a really, really useful tool as a pull-up, even though that doesn't really show up in competitions for CrossFit or anything like that, pull-ups are really, really useful on the rings, mainly because they force you to slow down and they teach you to hold those hollow and arch shapes, and they make the movement slower. What this does is it teaches that action of the chest coming up, the feet coming down, and then learning how to push yourself back and create the arch and hollow again as you're traveling down. Now, the big thing with the rings is that you can't push against something solid to actually create that action. It means you have to rely on your own body and tension through your core to be able to achieve that, rather than just relying on the bar itself and your upper body to do it. So particularly upper body people, you might actually struggle with that. So this will teach positions a lot better, but it also teaches the shapes to actually create the chest to bar. So if you're doing the rings, everything stays the same. Only difference with a ring, your ribs need to come further forwards, which will mean that you'll create a little bit of internal rotation with your shoulder, which is fine. We want to learn that for the ring muscle up anyway. So again, it's worthwhile learning that. From there, again, arch to hollow. From there, you're pulling down on those rings to pull up to the chin over the top of the hands. Obviously, you'll struggle a little bit to get the extra height. That's fine. It doesn't work quite the same on the rings. The other thing with the rings is just focus on staying tight. You don't need to be thinking about the toes hips action to move yourself away from the bar to then pull into it. It's actually a lot smarter and better to allow yourself to stay tight and long and let the momentum of your ribs and hips switching because the straps are so much longer, and that gives you the momentum and the leverage that you need to allow that to happen. So you'll see that it'll be a lot less hip movement and a lot less foot movement as I go into the rings compared to what I was just doing on the bar. So I'll just do a couple of ring pull-ups. Again, everything stays the same. I'm going to jump up onto those rings, still going to get my knuckles just on top of those rings. From there, I'm going to arch through, rib cage comes through, hollow, I'm going to pull down on top of those rings. I'm going to wait for that weightless moment to then pull in. My feet are going to come down. My feet are going to push forwards and scoot forwards rather than me pushing on the bar itself. And then from there to long arms, arch through, and repeat. So I'll go through a couple of those. So, about the only other difference you'll notice is that slight pause at the top. That's literally allowing me to control this motion of the swing with the of the pendulum from the anchor point, and that's needed to create that nice smooth movement. But you see the parallels between that and the chest bar action, and it gives beginners in particular a really good sensation of what they need to do to understand where they're moving. Okay, final development is butterfly. Now, butterfly can obviously be done as a pull-up or as a chest bar. It's fine either way. What we want to be doing with the butterfly is remembering all those same things. We just change the action slightly. So, a pull-up has the half moon shape. In terms of you come down, you pull, you'll go back through the half moon. A butterfly removes that return phase and instead goes for a full cyclical nature. So you'll move inside an oval. So you'll pull up to the bar, chin over the top of the height of the bar, not the actual bar itself. And from there you'll pull underneath and go back around again. And it means that you can get more reps quicker. However, it does put more tension through the bicep tendon, so some people will get agitation through the front of their shoulder. Big thing there is make sure you get your arms long. Don't hold tension there. If you hold tension there, you will get agitation through your shoulder. Let the arms go long so they can internally rotate and then move into the next one. So, everything else stays the same though. Gripping over the top, the false grip over the top, getting those knuckles on top of the bar. From there, you're still thinking about, as you come into your hollow, you're still thinking about pushing down on that bar, the toes are still elevating, the hips are still creating that little bit of a pop, and you still go into your arch. The hips are still going to be in the middle of the bar, and the ribs and legs are going to be moving in opposite directions to each other. So as you create that cyclical action, you're going to create legs in front, ribs behind. You're going to transition to get ribs underneath the bar, feet underneath the bar. Ribs are going to come in front, legs are going to come in behind, and then you're going to keep creating that action. And the legs and ribs are just going to move in opposite circles to each other, which allows them to create the power that you need to generate the pull. So, big thing here with learning this is don't try and get height. Everyone tries to get their height first and they can't control the rhythm. And that's because the ribs and the legs are moving in completely different cycle rates. First things first, control it with your shoulders, like we said with the kip and pull up. And second, forget the height. Just forget the height. Doesn't matter. It'll come. Same thing goes when you're going to chest to bar, because you just do the same action and you just build up to going higher and higher. But when you're doing this action for the first time, start from a dead hang, muscle the position. Literally use the arms to muscle the circular action. Once you've got the rhythm there, you'll find the legs will actually start to move by themselves because the shoulders have created the action for them. And then from there, you just add a little kick to gradually build that timing up. And the cue for the kick is as the arm gets long. So as I pull through, I'll go long, snap with the legs to drive through. So I'm going to start dead. I'm going to pull myself towards the bar and then pull through and just muscle it for a couple of reps. And then I'm going to add the legs to kick in. Get the grips right. From there, I'm going to look up. I'm going to muscle towards the bar. Now, that was all arms. I was literally just pulling. And you see how the legs, I literally was just hanging my legs down. And you see how my legs just started to move in that little bit of circular action. Now I'm going to add the legs in deliberately. to create the actual kip action. So same thing, pull and muscle, then start to kick, 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 and you can just see how I just generate a little bit of height each time as the arms start going long. So arms go long, you add the kick. If you're trying to do a chest bar, all you do is move further back to create the action itself, rather than relying on the short action. So you just create the action longer, you pull behind the bar for longer, you create a higher toe action to actually get the chest to the bar itself. If I just do 2 of those, and you get the idea. Okay, so that's moved through all our movements. We've gone through pull-up, chest to bars, rings, and butterfly. Big thing to remember is control your rhythm. If you control your rhythm, believe me, the rest of the action will really fall into place for you. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please message.